Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Born Podcast, brought to you from our studio here in central Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Nathan Imboden, and here on the podcast, we get to champion the message of entrepreneurship and business ownership by interviewing local business owners and leaders right here in our backyard in central Pennsylvania. And we really get to peel back the onion and learn about what it takes to run and grow successful organizations here in the mid-state. And you can find a full replay of these broadcasts on our website at questmont.com/bornpodcast. Also, we're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, any of your podcast apps that you like to listen to. Search for The Born Podcast. Hit that like and subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all the episodes that we do. And today, I am really excited and privileged to have a good man, David Taylor, with the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, and we're going to talk about we'll call it a cousin, maybe a confused cousin sometimes, in the Manufacturers Association of Pennsylvania, and the differences, correct?
Okay.
Because sometimes people don't realize that there are two organizations that have very similar names.
Right, there are multiple groups, yes.
But we'll get to that later. But anyways, David, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Nathan. Thank you.
And we have a mutual connection. I would be remiss if I didn't shout out to our producer, Joy, who also works for your organization.
Yes, Joy is our communications director, and she is an absolute gem. We are so glad to have her as a member of our team.
And we are so glad that you continue to allow her to be a part of this podcast.
Oh,
so
yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you for that.
You betcha.
All right, well, let's dig into you a little bit. Why don't you just give a little bit of your background, and then we'll maybe work our way to how you got to here, where you're at right now.
Well, sure. Okay. Well, again, my name is David Taylor, and I'm the president and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. I'm in my 26th year with the association, wow. So I keep joking, I guess we know what I'm going to be when I grow up. My hometown is Huntingdon, Pennsylvania, out in the Altoona State College area. Born and raised there, and I'm a graduate of Dickinson College in Carlisle. Yep. And interestingly, I double majored in history and dramatic arts. Okay. So as a former theater major, I'm lucky to have a job at all. But it really is interesting because early on I was taking history classes out of my own personal interest, and because I had set that as my major, and I made really good progress early on, and then I realized I was spending all of my time in the theater like for fun anyway, and I thought, hey, wait a minute, if I take these core curriculum classes and then use all of my electives, I could do a second major in the theater. And I actually did acting as a hobby until I got too important at my job. But for many years, I was an actor with the Harrisburg Shakespeare Company that puts on Shakespeare in the Park up in Reservoir Park here in Harrisburg. And those folks are great friends of mine. And but it's interesting, and in some ways it feels providential that the training that I did, the exercise of going through those classes with acting and directing and movement and whatnot, that they've helped me to be a really good communicator. Yeah. And so in the course of giving legislative testimony or presiding at a Capitol press conference or doing an interview show like this, that kind of training has proven to be exceptionally useful in my career.
Yeah.
So
you can tell.
Well, thank you, sir.
You can tell.
Thank you. My first job out of college was working for old George Bush, Bush 41, at Republican National Committee, where I was the lowliest foot soldier in the president's re-election campaign. Not a lot of folks remember, he was actually supposed to win. Yeah. And when that didn't happen, we all got cashed out and sent home. And so I found my way to Harrisburg for the first time, and I was a staffer in the state Senate for a brief while, and then I also worked for a conservative organization called the Pennsylvania Leadership Council that puts on the annual Pennsylvania Leadership Conference, which is still going. And in fact, I find myself as the chairman of the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. So that's something else from cool. From being from being the staff guy to now being the guy on the masthead. But I spent a lot of, so that was 93, 94, spent a lot of time in 94 volunteering for my friend Congressman Rick Santorum on his U.S. Senate campaign. And when Rick won, I was one of the first staffers in his legislative office in Washington. So I got to work in the U.S. Senate. And that was 95, 96, and I wanted to come home. I'm again, Huntington, PA is about 12,000 people in a county of about 45,000 people. Being in Washington D.C. was kind of oppressive, and so wanted to come home, and so I moved back, and I started at PMA in August of '97, and I've been there ever since.
Were you drawn to PMA for a particular reason, or you were looking, it was an opportunity that was there? And
it was, Mr. Anton, Frederick W. Anton III, God rest his soul, that he was my boss and an absolute legend in Pennsylvania politics and government. He was a Philadelphian, a lifelong Philadelphian, and that he led our organization for more than 50 years. And that he had been the leader of Pennsylvania Leadership Council, and so I had encountered him there, and so it was a chance for me to come back to be part of his organization. I didn't know that much about business. I was always more of a sort of a national security conservative type person. Other parts of that sort of Reaganite agenda, and that I've came now to this pro-growth, free enterprise part of the spectrum later in life. But boy, I have learned so much, and it has been such a tremendous privilege to be with the makers and the doers who really undergird our entire civilization. When you come to realize that every last thing that we have, that we touch, that we use, it was made in a factory. It was made by manufacturers, using tools and inputs that themselves were made by manufacturers, things that were mined and processed, things that were the component parts. All of these things go into that manufacturing process on the plant floor. So just to put things in perspective, in Pennsylvania, manufacturing represents about $100 billion of value added every year. That on the plant floor and in direct supervision of that workforce, it's about 560,000 Pennsylvanians. But because manufacturing is, it's a multi-stage process where you take raw materials or component parts, and that you add value, you yield that finished good. Manufacturing has the strongest spin-off effect on job creation, so that activity on the plant floor sustains millions of additional Pennsylvania jobs in supply chains, in distribution networks, all of the trucking and warehousing and the forklift jobs, wholesale, retail, all of the vendors who help service what happens on the plant floor, with HR, payroll, legal, all those things. Manufacturing generates tremendous wealth, and because our sector adds the most value, that manufacturing jobs have the best wages and benefits in the marketplace. So these are family-sustaining jobs. This is the pathway for folks to middle-class living, and furthermore, that our manufacturing employers, that the entities, are very significant local taxpayers, which sustain local government, public services. So, it's better to express it in positive terms, but I think it's more easily understood in negative terms, which is what happens to a town that loses its factory.
Exactly.
And so this is why our organization exists to advocate a pro-growth, pro-production agenda for Pennsylvania. That our mission is competitiveness, because in a free country with a free economy, decisions to invest private capital are voluntary.
Correct.
That the state legislature in Harrisburg can't pass a law requiring people to, locate, invest, hire, operate, expand. Those are all choices that business folks make,
Yep.
which is why our leaders should, be focused on making it the smart business decision for people to choose to come here rather than, one of our, competitor states.
Sure.
And so, these are the issues that we work on to try to, make it easier for, our manufacturers to operate, add value, and compete. And it really comes down to, hammering down the baseline costs of creating and keeping jobs.
Yeah. All right. How do you? I want to get into how you do that.
Okay.
What kind of work you do to actually advocate for and move that forward.
Mm-hmm.
But where do your resources come from to be able to do this?
Well, I mean, we have, of course, the support of our members, the PMAs. I mean, we represent the whole sector, and so that's it's like 12,000, I think, entities across the Commonwealth. But our dues-paying members tend to be the big guys.
Okay.
U.S. Steel and Merck and Boeing and those kinds of folks. We also have an endowment, which is a very rare and wonderful thing for us in that we are not nearly so dependent on dues dollars as many of our peer organizations are around the country. I'm headed out actually on Sunday to go to my annual conference with my peers from around the country, and we are in an enviable position, and that also because we don't have a Bigfoot donor who can actually boss us around. We have the great privilege of being able to stand for to be pro-market rather than just pro-corporate.
Right.
We're not interested in subsidies or rent seeking or any of that stuff. We consider profitability the responsibility of the member company. Our mission is to give them better fundamentals for doing what they do.
Yeah, fantastic. So that leads to then, what do you do? What does the organization do? The big priorities and what you focus on to help make sure you can advance the manufacturing world here in Pennselsvania and make it more attractive.
I mean, the policy agenda that we pursue has been pretty consistent over time. It really, there are 5 points on the star. Number one is spending restraint. That when government spends money faster than people can earn it, it suffocates growth. And that you don't actually hear other business groups really talk about that. So long as they, so long as they get their piece of the action, then they don't, care that much about the spend number. But again, if you're looking to bend the curve on big picture competitiveness, until we control the growth of state spending, we're not going to be able to do things like the second point, prioritize pro-growth business tax relief.
Sure.
That Pennsylvania's business tax rates have been much too high for much too long, and that this has been a big driver of Pennsylvania's chronic economic underperformance, where Pennsylvania, we put one foot in front of the other. Our economy still grows, but when you benchmark us against the national average, we always lag. And of course, this is a key indicator of, the overall health of our state, because, people go where the opportunities are. And if Pennsylvania underperforms and that other states have more robust job markets and opportunities, well, that's where our younger folks wind up going.
Right.
And, you look at Charlotte and Tampa and Austin and Phoenix, and it's like, when how can I say it the right way? So Pennsylvania is famously parochial. And a lot of our leaders, don't seem to realize that there's a world beyond the 67 counties. And so even when we make progress relative to where Pennsylvania has been, it doesn't mean that we've made net progress, because the world doesn't stand still. So, like Pennsylvania's corporate net income tax, punishingly high at 9.99. In the dying days of the Wolf administration, that finally a reduction plan was set in motion. taking it to 8.99 this January, so that's the current rate, and then it's to go down 0.5% every year until it gets down to 4.99. And 4.99 is a good rate. Problem is that in the interim, that an awful lot of private sector decisions are going to be made about investing.
Right.
And that, so basically you're telling me that by the time that my middle schooler graduates from college, that we'll finally have a rate as low as South Carolina's is today.
Yeah.
So again, it's the right medication but the wrong dosage.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting back to priorities: spending restraint, pro-growth business tax relief, regulatory reform. That in Pennsylvania we have regulatory overkill run amok, and that we absolutely have to fix the system by which licenses and permits are issued. We need to have a systematic review of the regs that are on the books to make sure that we still need them.
Right.
If they are doing what they were supposed to do, the purpose for which they were enacted.
Right.
Are they doing that? Have there been side effects? Is it still worth the doing? Are these things cost effective? It's a kind of madness that all the state government and the lawmakers and the regulatory agencies, all they do is just keep promulgating more and more rules, and nobody ever goes back to check.
Right.
Did it work? Do we
Right.
still need it? And so the stack just keeps getting higher. And what we need really is systematic review. It's almost like a kidney function in the body to separate what we need from what we don't need. So, there are any number of proposals that have been put forward. Even Governor Shapiro, during his campaign, talked about the importance of making progress in this area. So that's one of the things that we do. The fourth thing is fighting lawsuit abuse. Pennsylvania is an extremely litigious state. Philadelphia may be America's lawsuit abuse capital.
Sounds about right.
And so, that is just, it's like a hidden tax. And so to the extent that Pennsylvania is worse in this particular dimension, that again, it affects our competitiveness, the willingness of people to invest, the ability of people to run profitable operations. And the fifth thing I would say is regarding the workforce. And so, labor law is under that, but really anymore, with the workforce crisis that we face, that really, job training, workforce development, it's a grave concern. I would say that for our manufacturing employers, it's probably the top concern right now.
Yeah. Any peers of mine that are in the manufacturing industry, that's all they talk about is their biggest fear. And that does that start earlier than job training and skill development, but start in the educational system as well, where we're actually promoting manufacturing jobs, trade labor, that kind of stuff as a viable...
and there are multiple dimensions to this. So Pennsylvania is one of the top spenders in America with the public K through 12 system. I think it's around
7th in the nation.
Yeah, it's like $30 billion every year, which I think that's a noticeable amount of money, $30 billion. And so you would think that for that, our young people would receive an educational experience that is rigorous, challenging, meaningful, prepares them for success in life. Too often that is not the case, and that too many of our young people are stuck in schools that are underperforming, that are substandard, in some instances actually dangerous and unsafe. And what's worse is that many of the schools that are underperforming by the greatest margin are some of the most expensive. So they're not just failure factories.
Right.
They're not just disasters, they're expensive disasters. And so this is why our organization has long supported education reform, whether it is school choice or charter schools, virtual schools, the various scholarship opportunities that the Commonwealth has to get kids out of bad schools so that they have the chance to learn. That I would hope we could all agree that education is the great equalizer, and that this is the thing that gives each of us the chance to excel, to become our best selves, and to be able to make a good living and to care for ourselves, and to have the dignity of self-sufficiency.
Sure.
And and also not to be a burden on society. And so yes, we do need the cultural shift of focusing on the skilled trades and manufacturing, that we need to completely smash this mindset of and it's like the Mike Rowe message. And again, as somebody who was expensively educated at a private liberal arts college and majored in theater, I understand that I'm like the least likely person to be making the Mike Rowe message, but it's true. It's absolutely true. If we did not have the makers and the doers out there applying those skills, doing that work, making all of those things, that we would all be sunk.
Right.
Because every last one of the things that make our lives clean and safe and comfortable and convenient, those are all made possible by massive systems of production and distribution. And it's a paradox, because part of the consumer experience has become making that delivery seamless, almost invisible. And it's very convenient, but it's also lulled us into this false sense that all this is easy, and we've stopped thinking about how these miracles are made possible. And the one it's an example, but it resonates with me, and I keep using it, which is to say, we flick the light switch and we think we turned the lights on.
Right.
Like, no, you closed a circuit that was wired into your building by an electrician using tools and equipment that were manufactured, that it takes you to the line that the lineman strung, which connects you to the power plant that had to be designed and built and staffed and fueled, and on and on and on. Like, unless you grew it or whittled it yourself, it came from a factory and it was delivered by a truck, and all of these things, and that we need a society that values all kinds of work.
Yeah.
It is just a terrible societal failure to look down on people who work with their hands, and also that, for our young people, there's no reason why somebody can't go and get a 2-year program for like, say, a nursing degree, and then work as a nurse while you're going to college pre-med.
Right.
Or to be an electrician and work while you're going to college to become an engineer. There's this awful bigotry that, if you work in the skilled trades or manufacturing, that it makes you a grease monkey.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like, these folks, they have a lot to offer. And like I said, without the contributions that they make to society, we would all be, like, totally out of luck.
Yeah. I think we all could benefit from that daisy chain, if you will, of thought going back to, like, even you said, though, growing something. But even then, you can't grow something out of thin air. So you still have to start somewhere.
Right.
So, all right, I want to grow some tomatoes in my garden so that I can be self-sustaining. Well, I still have to buy a plant or a seed or something from somewhere that had to be grown by someone that was using tools. And you've got your grow box
that's made out of plastic.
Right.
And on and on and on. And it's so human flourishing has been made possible by 4 elements: steel, cement, plastic, and ammonia. That without those 4 elements, modern society would not be possible. And all 4 of those things require petrochemical inputs. And this is something else where, there's this push for, to electrify everything so that we won't need fossil fuels. Well, that's just, again, that's preposterous because, well, obviously you can't electrify everything without wiring.
Right.
And if you're going to use all that wiring, the wires are made out of copper that has to be, mined, and then the copper ore has to be processed. And then you've got to, if you don't want to get electrocuted, you got to wrap those copper wires with, artificial rubber, which is a petrochemical product.
Right.
So, and also for many of the things that we need as a society, the things that I named, the cement and the ammonia, that they require a very high temperature point that cannot be reached with electricity.
Right.
And so again, this is why you have to have coal-fired or natural gas-fired furnaces to achieve the temperature point to make these products. Because, and this is something else that I hadn't fully appreciated. The degree to which agriculture depends on ammonium nitrate, which is artificial fertilizer, that manure is not scalable. Like, you can't increase production as the population grows. So, like, this is why we have to supplement with ammonium nitrate, and that if we did not have that artificial fertilizer, 3 billion human beings would die of starvation.
Right.
Like, that's how important that particular contribution is to modern civilization. And so, again, just to have a little bit of humility and a little bit of perspective and a little bit of gratitude that all these modern miracles are around us, and especially, with plastic. You think about a hospital, you think about a surgical suite, and like Senator Fetterman getting his pacemaker defibrillator. Like, in that surgical suite, everything is made out of steel and plastic. That even you have like antimicrobial coatings on the stretcher and the things, like, all those are petrochemical products. And to me, it's akin to the dismissive attitude that some people have about the skilled trades in manufacturing, the same failure to appreciate the contributions of the things that are made for them.
Yeah.
Like, again, without which their lives would not be clean, safe, comfortable, and sanitary. It's like we go to the grocery store and there are tens of thousands of choices arrayed around us. And you go through produce and you see bananas, and maybe you think fleetingly of a boat crossing the Caribbean or some such. But, like, who thinks about the refrigeration tech who works on the truck that carries the frozen food from where it's manufactured to your grocery store so that it arrives there, in code and at the right temperature point so things don't spoil. Like, every last one of those products has its own system of delivery, but we walk down the aisle and see all these things and think that it's normal. My grandmother, my mother's mother, that she passed away in 1996 at the age of 94.
Wow.
And so, growing up with my grandma, she was a farm girl, that she would tell stories that when she was a girl, that for Christmas she would get one orange. And of course, and that to her, that was incredible. It was just this glorious, amazing, wonderful thing that she got to have her own orange and eat it. And it's like, well, all of us, like, we can have orange juice for breakfast every day.
Yeah.
And never think twice about it.
Yeah.
We as a society have become so incredibly wealthy, so incredibly prosperous, that, as I said before, in many instances, I think that we fail to really reflect on how that is made possible. and it's not only our our manufacturing employees and the talents that they apply in the workplace every day, but of course it's also the management side too, the investors and the innovators and the planners who make sure that their company is responding to changing demand and changing market conditions,
right.
and making sure that the supply chains work, and all that stuff, because if management messes up those things, if they fail, then the business fails, and that all of the folks on the plant floor that they're out of jobs.
Right.
It's like, this is again the I think in modern times, in current times, that management and labor are discovering a new and greater respect for one another, a better appreciation for one another, and I really see this as sort of two sides of the equation. That for management to have this extreme workforce crisis, where people can't fully staff up, that they're leaving money on the table because there's work to be done, but you can't bid on the contract if you can't staff up at a
right.
third shift. Like, if you don't have the capacity to do the work, you can't go after the work. And so insofar as the industrial unions are keepers of the flame, that they have the apprenticeship programs and those things, that they stand for professional excellence in their trade, like, I think management recognizes that is a tremendously valuable thing, and that we really need that. And on the other side of the equation, from the labor side, you see the growing political power of the radical Greens, that literally they don't want shovel to touch dirt.
Yeah.
And so for, if you are a member of the building trades, well, like, you want to build things. If you're a LIUNA guy, you want to deploy pipeline. If you like the steel workers and the iron workers, the boiler makers, like all these guys, they have jobs, they have skills that they've spent their lives developing and perfecting. And so I think that the common ground is a pro-production agenda, that labor management agree these jobs should exist, that this industrial activity should go forward, because again, this is how we add value. This is how we sustain our civilization. And so this leads me to something else, along with those sort of 5 policy areas. Because with manufacturing, no matter what it is that you're making, you're almost always consuming huge amounts of energy.
Yeah.
And so we are very committed to a pro-production agenda for Pennsylvania Energy, and especially building out the infrastructure to be able to deliver that energy from the places where it's harvested to where the population centers are,
Sure.
where the energy can benefit people.
Sure.
And that's the Marcellus shale play was only discovered in 2005. That production only really ramped up starting in 2008. So this is still something that's relatively new. And yet during that time, Pennsylvania went from being an importer of natural gas to now that we are the second largest producer of natural gas in America, behind only Texas, and that Pennsylvania's contribution to the national energy portfolio has made America #1 in the world.
Wow. Yeah.
That this is still a nascent sort of industry, that there are trillions of cubic feet of natural gas recoverable, but we can't get production to where it should be because of choke points with distribution, not enough pipeline. Of course, you have fanatics in New York and New Jersey that are preventing us from fueling New England, and again, it's a great paradox. It's so frustrating because in Massachusetts, they heat their homes with home heating oil or wood stoves, both of which emit much more carbon than natural gas. And so they're going to villainize us and say that natural gas is terrible, when in fact, if we would supplant what they're doing now, emissions would go down. it was January of, I think it was 2019, that in Boston Harbor, that there was a tanker of liquefied natural gas. It was a French flag tanker, but the natural gas came from Russia. And again, talking about environmental compliance and whatnot, basically Boston environmentalists would rather pay Vladimir Putin to kill baby seals by plundering the Arctic than to allow a pipeline a couple hundred miles from Pennsylvania. Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania, in the far northeast, little Susquehanna County is the #1 natural gas producing county in America. Not Texas, not Louisiana, not Oklahoma, Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. And we can't get that clean burning natural gas to the metropolitan New York area or up to Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts. It's insane. So, I mean, paradoxically, that does give us the opportunity to more fully deploy those resources for consumption in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And this it is a tremendous discovery. This could, capital C could, lead to broad-based prosperity and sustained economic growth, but only if we embrace it.
Yeah, we have to embrace it, allow it, promote it, encourage it.
Absolutely.
And put policies or infrastructure in place to be able to make it happen.
Yeah. So that's the world that I want to live in.
Yeah.
And so the Marcellus play is essentially everything under the Allegheny Mountains and the north and west. So up on the northern tier, along the New York state border, that the natural gas comes out of the ground pure methane. It doesn't have to be processed or separated. It's ready to go. Put it in the pipe for industrial furnaces, home heating and cooking, electricity generation. And so that's why you've seen all that development up there in Susquehanna and Bradford and Potter County. In the far southwest, out on the Ohio-West Virginia line, that you have the methane, the natural gas, come out of the ground with a superabundance of other chemicals, propane, butane, pentane, natural gasoline, and those chemicals are feedstocks. Like, we can make stuff out of that. Ethane is the big one. That's the one I was grasping for. And so this is why you've seen the multi-billion-dollar investment by Royal Dutch Shell in the Pennsylvania Chemicals Complex in Beaver County, that they're taking that ethane gas, they're cracking a hydrogen molecule off of it, which is why the plant is sometimes called a cracker, and turning that ethane into ethylene into polyethylene. And so the polyethylene, depending on how you process it, that from that you can derive every kind of plastic, styrofoam, rubber, every kind of paint, glaze, coating, solvent, adhesive, all of the inputs that go into all of the products that you and I handle and use every day.
Yeah.
And so it lowers the cost of the feedstock by your proximity to it. That these were things, heretofore that we would have to import from the Gulf of Mexico. But because this facility exists now and is going to be cranking out like 1,200,000 tons of polyethylene every year. They're like tiny little pellets, like smaller than an aspirin, but it's like 1 billion pounds a year, that you've just created an actual economic reason for manufacturers to want to locate near to where the feedstock is being made.
Because it lowers their cost in production, it lowers then the cost to the consumer, it lowers everything, and it makes it more friendly to drive them here to our state.
And that's where the value gets added.
Yeah.
And so it isn't just about the drilling and the harvesting the energy or the feedstocks and just exporting them, that the value is from deploying them and using them here, because that's the extra stage where even more value gets added.
Yeah.
And that's what we fight for. Those are the kinds of family sustaining jobs, the kind of value added that is going to generate prosperity. And it's big enough that, if we did it right, if we committed to this, that this could resurrect our brownfields.
Yeah.
All of those, former factory towns out there in southwestern Pennsylvania, this could be the thing that brings them back to life.
Yeah.
But when we have an attitude by leaders of disinterest, if not disdain, then again it's the ongoing opportunity cost of not making the most of the things that are available to us now.
Yeah. Well, this is why we need organizations like yours that are out fighting for. You're fighting for this particular cause, but what you're really fighting for is, and you did the daisy chain of it rooting back to, at the very core of it are families, jobs, they're family-sustaining jobs that are being created that help also propel all of this, because we know in our capitalistic society that money just cycles and it goes to them through other vendors, suppliers, whatnot, that all use those other manufacturers and vendors and suppliers, and it all has. But if we cut off the source, we don't have any of it.
Yeah, you saw what happened in Johnstown when Bethlehem Steel moved out.
Right, exactly.
It just all of the related jobs that had been sustained by the facility there, it all just dried up and blew away. And it's a tragedy. And that's the thing that we want to prevent that. Fight for those 500,000 folks on the plant floor, fight for that $100 billion a year, but we could have so much more.
Yeah.
We could have so much more. And, how sad is it that we aspire to mediocrity? But if Pennsylvania could just grow at the national average, we would be much better off. We would be much more wealthy, prosperous. The young people would stay, that outsiders would come, and as a result, you could see the kind of dynamic that exists today in those other places that I was talking about.
Yeah,
I want that here. I want that for our people.
I do too. That's a future I get excited thinking about.
Yes, sir.
And we all of us are benefactors of the work that you guys are doing and fighting for us behind the scenes. I've had another gentleman, a friend we were talking about earlier, Charles Mitchell, and his organization on as well, because just like we did the daisy chain of, all right, well, there's this product here on this shelf, but how did it get there? And going through that, in the same way, we don't think a lot about all the other behind the scenes work that needs to be done to even allow us to be able to do those things, and your organization is one that's doing it. So I'm just thrilled that you're here in Pennsylvania, thrilled that your organization is in the position it is. As you said, you're in a beneficial position compared to some of your other maybe peers across the country. But if anybody's watching at home that is not, they're aware of your organization but should be, whether they're in the manufacturing space, and wants to get more involved, what would they do? What's the first steps?
Well, go to pamanufacturers.org and enter your email for all of our communications. That we have radio programs, we have publications, we have television programs that we do. And again, just to follow us and read along to learn more about these critical issues that affect prosperity in Pennsylvania. We may even bug you to contact your lawmakers when there are things that are happening. But also, I do want to mention that we have another great benefit that we have in Pennsylvania is that there are a number of other regional and local manufacturing groups that are strong and that they're allies of ours. That in particular, I want to thank the Greater Reading Chamber, which was formerly the Berks County Manufacturers Association, the Northeastern Pennsylvania Manufacturers and Employers Association, which is Schuylkill, Luzerne, Lackawanna, Carbon, Monroe, the manufacturers of South Central Pennsylvania, based in York, and that the Manufacturer and Business Association, they're headquartered in Erie, but their footprint is all of Western Pennsylvania, everything from Williamsport to Erie to Pittsburgh, and all of those groups are they're excellent organizations led by really good people who are friends of ours, and that they are able to be much more involved at that grassroots kind of level with, with workforce training, with providing the kinds of programs that local employers can make good use of. Whereas, PMA, my organization, that our focus is almost exclusively on public policy, government relations, media relations.
Right.
And so we work together, that we are their, eyes and ears in the state capitol, and that, that they help us by, distributing the message and getting the word out to their folks where they are.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we need allies because we can't do it alone.
Yes, sir.
And we need experts that are doing things that are in their lane that they are really good at and can excel at, and partner together well to be able to advance things. So thank you for those shout outs, and everybody that's at home watching. If this organization, if the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association, or any of the other organizations that David mentioned are in your region, geographical area, check them out.
Yeah, you can link through to all those things through the PMA website. But if you go there and visit us, enter your email, that we will give you a good, strong, steady stream of programming for your eyes and ears. And I think also I am very proud that we have continued to, I don't want to praise ourselves too highly, but that we've continued to improve with the quality and the sharpness of our messaging, of our communications. And again, this is something that our friend Joy has been so helpful with. But we have a half-hour news program on the Pennsylvania Cable Network called PMA Perspective that we do 24 times a year. So it's like 3 blocks of 8 programs. So it's not literally every other week, but all of those things are archived on the website.
Okay, great.
And along the way, I've gotten to do some really cool interviews. I actually interviewed Mike Rowe.
Oh, cool.
Once.
That's very cool.
Interviewed Steve Forbes, and it was also very cool that I got to sit down with Dick Yingling.
Oh, very cool.
Great Pennsylvania manufacturer.
Yeah, amazing. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. A little different than we normally do, but this is important stuff that we need to talk about because, again, we do, I think, in our society, we have a very easy way of just seeing what's right in front of us and not actually thinking bigger picture and deeper and beyond. And we need to do that more.
And also as Americans, that we have the privilege and the responsibility of being a self-governing people, and that I urge everyone to exercise your citizenship, live life with your brain turned on, know who your elected officials are, know what the issues are that are being voted on in the state capitol, because all of these things really they affect our lives, they affect our businesses, and that we need to help guide our elected officials to move in the right direction.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I think we focus so much at the federal level because it gets the most attention, but real change happens at the state and local level, and I think more people need to be at least educated, if not involved, in how that works.
I would agree.
Yeah. So, David, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. It has really been a pleasure. It's been nice to have this little reunion of sorts, having Joy back and sitting in the same room together. But keep doing all the good work that you're doing. You're again behind the scenes fighting for all of us every day. Every piece of what we're looking at in here is a direct result of the work that organizations like yours and others around the country continue to fight for. And so we appreciate that, and we hope to see more advancements here in Pennsylvania in the near future.
Thank you very much for having me, Nathan. This has been wonderful.
Awesome. Well, everybody at home, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on another episode of the Born Podcast.